All right. We are going live on Facebook as well. So, good afternoon and welcome to Jobs for Singaporeans Rally. And I can see a few of attendees are behind. Please come on in front. So, today we are gathered here to talk about jobs for Singaporeans as well as the statistics with regards to the statistics of underemployment, how many people are not keeping up well with rises of prices of cost of living, expenses, and rising prices, but stagnating wages, salaries, and income. For those guys who are here who might not know me, I'm Prabhu. I blog behind real issues in Singapore page in Singapore. You can see my page, and this is going live on my page as well. So we are here coming to you live from Hong Lim Park. It is to speak about jobs. As we can see, the unemployment rate as of based on Ministry of Manpower's data release, the last available data was for June 2020, which is about coming to 2 months to 3 months old right now. It stated that there is about 80 over 1,000 Singaporeans unemployed and 90 over 1,000 Singapore residents. Singapore residents include the Singapore PRs as well as Singaporeans. So we are addressing that as well. We are not xenophobic. And for those who are watching at home on Facebook Live, I'd like to apologize for the late because Hong Lim Park, we are here with the anti-climate change rally. I'd like to thank my friend who's running that, borrowed a power bank from him anyway. So thank you for your power bank. Without that, I can't live stream. Yeah, my battery was running low. Anyway, yeah. So we were going through about jobs. Past few days, we keep seeing news report after news report from the Ministry of Manpower that they are coming up with new work pass initiatives, new employment pass, as long as for a foreigner above $30,000 earning a month. So in a year, it works out to be about 360,000 and above. If you are a foreigner earning this, you are entitled to a new pass, at least 3,600,000 annum or 30,000 a month. But going by that standards, in the past, about 20 to 30 years ago, Mr. Goh Chok Tong and his wife are well known for stating that if you earn less than 600,000 is peanuts. So this is an in-between zone, less than 600,000 but still more than 360,000 annum. So we are primarily looking at jobs, and Mr. Leong Ji Hian later will in detail go through the numbers of how many people are the low income earners, the mid income earners, as in how in depth, how many people earn lower than a certain amount, how many people earn higher than a certain amount. I will mainly touch on the issue of there was a DBS study somewhere between somewhere just before, now it's currently September, somewhere in about July or August, stating that for those who are employed, 4 in 10 are not keeping up with inflation. 4 in 10 are not keeping up with living costs, expenses, and cost of living primarily. Basically, if jobs, right, is tied to many things, without a job, how are you going to afford basic necessities of food, water, electricity, and public housing, the HDB? 85% of Singaporeans live in HDB. 80 to 85% live in HDB. HDB is supposed to be subsidized public housing. However, there was a news report recently released by just HDB's public report that $877,000 for a new BTO flat. And this is actually primarily how the mechanisms that go behind pricing HDB is rather toxic. They are pricing it with the open market, and the open market are always going to ask higher than the BTO flat. So actually it is a negative feedback loop where it's a snowball effect. It keeps on rising and rising. So how do we solve this problem? One of the problems is there needs to be a transparency or breakdown in cost of what goes into pricing the HDB. 40 to 50% of the HDB selling price, the BTO selling price, primarily factors down to land costs. And why are we paying for land costs? Who does the land belong to? Yeah, but that is already sidetracking into the issue of public housing, which we already did a rally for, and this public housing issue keeps on is rather persistent. Today's issue is primarily main based on jobs. So going back to my view of, if without a job, how do we afford public housing? How do we afford public housing is already subsidized, it's also getting unaffordable. How do we afford to feed ourselves the very basic necessity of food? If food prices are on the rise, water as well, water, electricity, and in modern living, all right. I see my friends running anti-climate change is talking about fossil fuels. Our buses run on fossil fuels. Oil prices are on the rise. Gas prices are on the rise as well. So if you guys, primarily any one of you take public transport, you find that the public cost of public transport keeps on going up. It took me close to $2 just a one-way travel here on an adult fare card. Imagine if you pay cash, it's even higher. So for a two-way trip, right? It's already easily like from your home to your place of work and your place of work back to home. A day could cost as much as $4. That is very basic. You're not even going anywhere. Like let's say you only go to work and you let's say assume you eat lunch nearby your workplace. You do not travel out to lunch or you do not go anywhere else. Mainly just very basic. From home to work and work to home, it costs as much as $4. But of course, that can be kept off by the fare cut, concession cut of $128 per month. Is the unlimited travel you get they are selling. But do you know how many people do not earn enough? I mean, they can't really have the liberty of spending $128 of buying this pass. Recently, there was another report of that retail workers or the most minimum salaried full-time workers, the pay in today's day and age of 2022 is going up to 1,400. And hey, that 1,400 includes your CPF sum as well. Imagine 1,400. What is the take home? 1,120 after CPF. How to survive? Even not talking about a minister in the past spoke about how many meals do you want at a hawker center, at a coffee shop, or a restaurant? Let's not talk about restaurants. Even coffee shops are getting expensive, but the bare necessities, hawker center, HDB hawker center food as well, is going up to as high as it used to be $2 to $3. Now it's about $4 to $5 to $6, including a drink. So in a day, right, to have 3 meals a day, the cost is already $18. And if you are unemployed, we do not have unemployment benefits in Singapore, and there are people who I've helped and who have come to me for help. They are on the government's ComCare. ComCare in itself, it is not really an effective or efficient system, because after a few months you have to go for review, and in the interim period you do not get any payouts. So you have to wait for let's say between 4 weeks to 6 weeks, and in that 4 weeks to 6 weeks, those who are on ComCare literally got no money to eat as well. It is that bad. And you can see on my page, real issues in Singapore are addressed by me, Prabhu Ramachandran. Yeah. So I have raised a few rounds of crowdfunding for a few people that's on ComCare and similar situations. On the grounds of jobs, 90,000. So I'm not just highlighting the Singapore citizens who are 80,000 and above Singapore citizens, right? As of June, I think it should be about 81 over 1,000 who are unemployed. I'm highlighting the residents. So please don't quote me for being racist or being xenophobic. I include the Singapore PRs as well, the permanent residents as well as Singaporeans. The MOM puts it out as Singapore residences, Singapore citizens plus PR. About 91,000 are unemployed. as of June 2020. At the same time, a DBS report came up that DBS report is a separate issue. They came out stating, they published a report that 4 in 10 incomes, wages, and salaries are not keeping up with rising cost of living, inflation, and expenses. So we assume that those who are employed, 4 in 10 are not, their wages and salaries are not keeping up. So you take out those that are unemployed. Now you add back their unemployed plus the employed. Those who are employed, 4 in 10 makes up about a good 900,000. Those who are unemployed is about a 90 over thousand. You add up, it is about 1,040,000 people approximately, and estimate. Anyway, I hope I don't get prof mark for this number. It is an estimate, a very conservative estimate based on the news reports, statistics, and studies of various sources. And I get prof ma also good lah, because the ministry will be forced to reveal what is the exact numbers of people who are not keeping up with who are not keeping up with rising cost of living, inflation, and inflation is very broad spectrum. We have been seeing one of the highest consumer price index. We have been seeing one of the highest consumer price index rises in Singapore for the core inflation as well. About 4% per month that is going up. And this covers very basic essentials of food, water, electricity, products and services. Whatever that is consumables, you are consumer, you are able to buy, all right? So let's say if you are the only way you can be immune, let's say, from inflation is if you are not alive. If you are dead, that's the only way you can be immune, because you have to spend on food, you have to spend on water, you have to spend on electricity, and in our modern day and age, we have to spend on internet bills and mobile bills as well. All of this is going to get worse in a few months' time. Currently, remember, we are only paying 7% GST. We are only paying 7% GST, and here we have government ministers going around saying that, sorry. So we have government ministers going around saying that inflation, it is due to supply and demand factors, but a big factor has got to do with our regulations. What is our regulations? The GST. So historically, GST has shown to increase cost of living, increase cost of living, increase inflation as well. It is an inflationary contributor, or a factor of inflationary contributor, GST. GST in Singapore was introduced in the 1990s. Before the 1990s, we did not find that inflation was highly on the rise. But since about a good 30 years now, since the introduction of GST, first at 3%, then at 4%, then at 5%, and currently at 7%. Every time the GST rises, inflation is up as well. Cost of food goes up, cost of water, cost of electricity, cost of almost any and every product, goods or service is on the rise. The government could go around saying, it's a free market economy, but however, even the free market is subject to regulations. One good example is, I'll tell you, if really public housing was a free market, people could just buy and sell flats every day. There is a 5 years minimum occupation and such. So the sale of almost all food, water, electricity are all part of market conditions and regulations. The GST is one of the market conditions and regulations, which in fact contributes to the cost of living. It contributes to the higher expenses of food, water, electricity, mobile and internet, and basically you name it. So rising the GST at this time, when we are just coming out of a global COVID pandemic, is not a good idea. In fact, it is a bad idea, given that people are still struggling, people are not actually doing well. the unemployment seems to be reasonably high. The unemployment figures that I quoted thus far is the non-seasonally adjusted figures. The seasonally adjusted figures, of course, they say is better and stuff because it's seasonally adjusted. The non-seasonally adjusted figures are what I have quoted so far. 90,000 over PRs and Singaporeans are unemployed. And those who are employed, I mean, based on the TBS study, of course, though 4 in 10 are not keeping up with rising costs and inflation. They do not have. If you are unemployed, you already don't have incomes. So DBS is talking about income. So those who do have incomes, 4 in 10 are not keeping up. You add 90,000 together with 4 in 10 workers out of the total workforce works out to be about 950,000. 1,040,000 people are not doing well and are not keeping up with rising cost of living and inflationary measures. And of course, things such as sorry. They will tell us things such as, if there were so many people, why is there so few people attending here? Well, the unemployed people are out there looking for jobs. And if you find, the numbers are even more scary is because MOM's definition of employment is bare minimum 1 hour a week you work, you're considered employed. That means, for example, someone who could have just been retrenched due to situation and circumstances cannot go on without earning a single cent. So the next day, right, you're just retrenched today. Tomorrow, you just get a bicycle and you go and deliver food and you you work more than 1 hour per week, definitely. And you are considered as employed still. The issue of underemployment is about 4, could be about as high as 4 in 10. Sorry, my sound is breaking. So the underemployment is about 4 in 10. Unemployment is about 4%, close to about, between a very conservative estimate is 42% to 44% of all Singaporeans and PRs are falling behind. This is not a low number. Of course, they would still say it is still a minority. Majority is 6 in 10 are doing well. But this, are we going to wait for 6 in 10 are not doing well before we do any intervention actions or such? So with that said, I will hand on to my next speakers. I see 2 of my speakers are ready. One of my speakers is one of our speakers for this event who just made an appearance, Mr. Tan Kin Lian, former presidential candidate. I just saw him coming in. Really appreciative to have him here. So who would I would make way for the next speaker, and hopefully more speakers are coming by. Who do want to speak next? Check. 1, 2, test 1, 2. Okay. Before I introduce Mr. Tan Kin Lian up on stage, he's already here. And before we listen to him, I would like to quote that, we had, when Mr. Tan stood for elections all those time, he got a good 4 to 5% of the vote, but 104,000 people voted for him. Our current president, not even a single vote. I'd like to remind people that with that to do, Mr. Tan Kin Lian, please. A round of applause.
Very good afternoon. Hello.
Yeah.
It's okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Very good afternoon. Leong Si Hien told me, we met, I think, in the ORA, Old Refrigeration Association dinner. So he told me that he was shocked when he analyzed the statistics, the data of locals who lost their jobs. And the data was provided in Parliament by answer to the parliamentary question posed by some MPs. He was shocked at that number. Now, when we read the local media, we get the impression that job situation is satisfactory. Things are improving. But the actual situation is quite bad. Now, his views were reinforced by many people he met who relate their personal experience about losing jobs, about finding it difficult to get a job. Now, this is not just Leong Si Hien. Many people also told me that their personal experience of jobs is that the situation is quite bad. So Si Hien asked me if I can speak at Hong Lim, and I'm here. Now, my views are based on my personal observation over 35 years. So it's not something that I just think about now. I've been worried about jobs for 35 years. And I've also met many people. Whenever I take a taxi, that was in the days before you got Grab, I always ask the taxi driver, how long have you been driving? What was your previous job? And now, if I take a Grab, I also ask them. And quite often I get the answer, they lost their jobs due to economic restructuring. Businesses go away and therefore they lost their jobs. And the only alternative is to be a taxi driver. And some of them also become hawkers, hawker assistant, serving food at hawker stores. So these are quite common experience. Whenever I encounter people, I ask them. And what are the key reasons for this situation? For I consider a deteriorating job situation over 35 years. Now, I identify 4 key reasons. The first is national service. Now, what's wrong with national service? Our local males have to serve 2 years full time. And when they enter the job market, they are 2 years behind foreign workers who are able to start work 2 years earlier. So this is one factor. Now, prior to 1995, this was not a problem because Singapore, there were plenty of job opportunities and foreigners were not coming in large numbers. So even though our male citizens have to serve 2 years of national service, they still could get good jobs because there was no competition from foreign workers, not to the extent today. So today the situation is quite different because after that we start to have more foreigners coming in, and this was even before CECA, the Comprehensive Economic Agreement with India. Even before CECA, there was already an influx of foreigners from Malaysia, from Taiwan, from China, but still wasn't that bad. Our local males would still can get a job. The situation became very bad after CECA, and CECA came in 2006. There was a big influx of foreign professionals. They call it foreign talents. I never call it foreign talents. I just call it foreign professionals. And then this caused big problem because some of the older professional managers and professionals start to lose their job to foreign workers, to the foreign professionals. So this become very serious, and that is after 2006. Now, our besides the 2 years of full-time national service, our males also have to be called up every year for reservist duty. And when they are called up for reservist duty, it disrupts their job and their bosses, their managers are not happy. So this means after a while, some of the managers prefer to have foreign uh, professionals, foreign workers, because they are not called up for reservist duty. So this become another serious problem, and this is the problem of national service. Uh, Now, I want to make clear, many people whom I discuss this with says national service is important for Singapore. Now, I agree. National service is important, but it should not be done at the expense of our local males in their job, competing for good jobs in Singapore. So it should not be at the expense. In fact, during the first 25 years of Singapore's independence, a strong military force capability was very important for Singapore. But after that, after 25 years, conditions have changed. We do not need to put in so much resources, money into defense. We could have reduced the duration of national service, full-time and reservists. We could have put some more money into not manpower, into hardware, into military equipment. So conditions have changed after 25 years, and we could have done our national service differently. That means we don't have to put in so much resources. Now, I have also the last 15 years traveled to Indonesia quite regularly. And I know the people of Indonesia, they are very nice people. They are also struggling to give a better life for their citizens, economic development, and so on. So I could feel that we could have better relations. We are having better relations with our neighboring countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and other countries. We do not need to put in so much resources into national service, reservist duty in the military budget. So this, I think, is one serious issue affecting our job opportunity for locals. My second factor is the Employment Act. Now, the Employment Act was introduced in the middle 1960s, and the aim at that time was to provide security and benefits for workers. So we want an Employment Act to make sure workers get job security and get the benefit, whether it is medical, maternity, and retirement and other benefits. So the Employment Act was important, was good. Again, after 25 years, things have changed. The employment market has changed. During the early days, most people go for a full-time job with a big company or with the government, and they look for a lifetime career. It was quite safe and quite good prospect. But after when the economy, when world changes, more and more people have to depend upon casual work, part-time work, and therefore the employment situation has changed. But what happened is that our Employment Act remained largely unchanged. So the employer, when they want to employ part-time or casual workers, it's not very clear. They still have to provide medical benefit, maternity benefit, and so on. So that is not very clear. So for small employers who are not very clear, this then give a hindrance to the employment of local workers. And what many companies did to overcome this problem was they go through the thing called outsourcing. So instead of employing people, they outsource. So when the work is outsourced to contractors, the contractors will know how to get round the Employment Act. First, they bring in foreign workers, and secondly, they know how to get round the Employment Act and know how to manage the burdensome benefits and requirements of the Employment Act. They know how to get around it. So this gives rise to the practice of outsourcing. Now, outsourcing is very bad. Make the problem worse. It make it more difficult for locals to get jobs unless you are willing to work for a outsourced contractor. So I believe that we have to deal with this problem. How to change the Employment Act to recognize that part-time workers and casual workers should be treated differently from full-time workers. They should be paid reasonably well, but then the issues of uh, medical and other benefits have to be readdressed. So our Employment Act again, while it was very good at the start, after 25 years or so, it became a hindrance to the employment of local workers and people uh, uh, companies start to do more and more outsourcing, starting with the public sector, the government. Is very bad. At one time, I remember the school have got their own caretaker who clean the school and security. But all these are now being outsourced. And when they are outsourced, you can be sure that the contractor will bring in foreign workers and the terms and conditions for local workers are inferior than when they were working for the government in the public sector. I remember when I was with NTUC, at one time there was the public sector daily rated workers who are in charge of cleaning the city, cleaning Singapore. Now all these are now outsourced to contractors who bring in foreign workers, and the salaries are depressed. So outsourcing it become a serious problem, and I think we should find a way to stop outsourcing of many jobs. For example, I don't see why hospitals should outsource their cleaning and their maintenance. Those should be done in-house. Government, schools, and should also employ their own workers instead of outsourcing. Now, these are the two factors involving government policy. I now want to talk about two other factors involving the choice of the people themselves. The third problem is actually the problem caused by our own people. Many young people want to have a degree. Now, about 35% of students in each year enroll in local universities. But my estimate, I don't have the actual figures, is another 35% or more will enroll in universities either overseas, if the parent can send them overseas, or in universities that are in Singapore in collaboration with foreign universities. So therefore, we have about maybe 70% pursuing a degree. I think that is a very bad idea because the economy don't have jobs for 70% who are graduates. You might have jobs for 25 to 30% in the government, in the big companies. So the other people who pursue a degree will end up spending 3 years, spending a lot of money. Sometimes it's the money of their parents who have to take loans to send them to overseas. But sometimes it is they are on their own studying in Singapore. But these are 70% of graduates, people who are great, competing for jobs for which maybe the real full-time job could be only about 30%. So 40% spend 3 years pursuing a degree which they are not going to find a good use. Now, many of them tell me, Mr. Tan, a university degree is good because it broadened my mind. It give me more confidence. Now, that's true, but they must also see at what cost. Because the 3 years that they spend in pursuing a degree could be spent learning the skills of a job. You could be in whatever industry, whether it's in logistics, in catering, in food, in manufacturing. You can have 3 years of practical work experience in that field. And then that becomes very important. So we do have in our economy many people who are book smart but don't have practical experience. So this is, I think, the danger, the cost. Of course, the reason given for people to pursue a degree is graduates got better pay. That's true, provided you get a good job that require a good graduate. If you don't get a good job, you're ending up. I find many of these people in the mall selling credit cards, selling other vouchers, and so on. They don't pay well, and you spend 3 years acquiring knowledge that you don't use. That knowledge could have been, that time could have been better spent learning the skill. In Singapore, we are short of people who are electricians, plumbers, factory workers, and so on. Because uh, partly people don't want the job, but partly because the job don't pay well. But these are things that are needed in the economy. So this overemphasis on doing graduate jobs is a serious problem. My fourth point, and it's the last point, is about job hopping. I see so many people, young people, go to one job in one industry and then they hop to another job in another industry. For example, they could be in a hotel. After a few years, they move to logistics, and in logistics, they move to something else. So this job hopping from one industry to another will not give them the experience and the skills. So when they are young, it's probably all right. They can still get a job. But when they become in the middle, what do you call that, in their mid 40s and 50s, when they lose their job, it's very hard to get another job because they don't have the solid work experience. So these are the third and fourth factor which are relating to the preferences and the behaviors of our young workers. And I think we should also address this. If we continue the same way, things will get worse. So what can we do? I listed four factors. Two are government policies, and there's nothing much we can do except that the government should recognize these long-seated problems. Problems have been with us for 30, 40 years. But the other two factors are concerning what we as the people can do. And I want to encourage young people to think differently. Don't waste your time pursuing a university degree when you have other job options. Don't hop from one job in one industry to another because you will lose a chance to gain solid working experience and knowledge. Now, I want to say something about who is responsible for solving all these problems. Uh, the job problem. When the job situation is very bad, the answer is, of course, the Minister for Manpower. That is his duty. And I want to tell you about the last 35 years. The Minister for Manpower, how many ministers of manpower do we have? I counted 8 ministers of manpower, jump from A to B to C to D to E to F to G to H. The Minister for Manpower is the job with the highest turnover. And very, wow, it's very nice to have the breeze. It was very hot just now. Now it's very nice to have the breeze. So the Minister for Manpower is the job with a very high turnover. I think it's probably the most high turnover among the ministries. And if you look at the Minister for Manpower, you find that in most cases, the ministers are appointed with no past experience in manpower issues. So you're just appointed fresh and you have to learn on the job. And before they learn enough on the job, they are moved to another ministry. So that's why the job situation in Singapore is very bad. So what can we do? I think we have a very difficult situation, and I hope that our ministers and the government realize that things are very serious. We have a very messy job situation. Prospects are quite bad. Now, I'm not saying it's bad for everybody. In every cohort, maybe 50, 60% will do well. They will do well, they get good paying jobs. But I'm more concerned about the 40, 30, 40%. Their job prospects are very bad, and we need to find a way to solve this problem. And the government must recognize that we have a problem. We have got serious job losses. Now, if you take a look, you will find that the people who lose their jobs, people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they are quite okay. The reason is they buy the HDB flat 30 years ago at a low price. HDB flat have appreciated, so they have got some property gains, so they can still cope. It will be very difficult for the next generation because today HDB prices are very high. You cannot expect to be making a lot of money when you sell your HDB flat. In fact, some speakers say the flat has become older, the value one day becomes zero. So that buffer is no longer with us. So we do need to have good jobs for our young people, and we have recognized that the current job situation is bad for quite a lot of people. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I pass on to the next speaker.
Mr. Tan, before you leave, I for a long time wanted to give you my book. Due to COVID and situation and circumstances, I have wrote a personal note to you in there. So I present my book to Mr. Tan as a token of appreciation. So, guys, for all those who mentioned about sound and not being loud and all, right? So I would encourage, please come forward or please come nearer. Can you guys hear me right at the back and right at there? Okay. So, understand is the speaker system and the mic system is pretty limited, but you guys can hear my voice because I speak louder naturally, but other speakers might not speak as loud. So you guys heard Mr. Tan's speech. Another round of applause for Mr. Tan Kin Lian, who gave us a fantastic speech. He was giving us his 35 years experience of jobs, of businesses coming in out of Singapore, and the situation and circumstances that has led government policy. It is what it is right now. He did quote one of the ways of resolving this is government policy. So what we should be doing is tightening the inflow of lower, cheaper supply of labor. But however, the government seems to think it's a good idea to introduce $30,000 per month salaries. Okay, on paper it will look fantastic because not many people earn $30,000. But imagine the Singaporeans who are CEOs and directors earning 40, 50,000 and above. Their salaries could be depressed to $30,000 by foreigners who are currently in their present country, like be it North America, be it Europe, be it Australia, be it South America, who are currently unemployed or who are employed, but for them 30,000 is more than what they are earning due to currency rate exchanges. So they decide to come here. They could actually be suppressing the salaries of our top earners who earn more than $30,000 in practicality. I mean, this is just anticipation on my part. So with that done, the next speaker I'd like to introduce is Mr. Leong Zihian. Hopefully his voice is as loud as mine or even louder. For those guys who mentioned cannot hear, please come nearer or come forward to this side. Thank you very much. I pass to Mr. Leong.
Hey Prabhu, how can my voice be louder than yours? You are only 30 plus, I double 68. Tan Kin Lian mentioned when he started his speech that we met at ORA and I asked him if he would like to speak at today's event. So what is ORA? Old Refrigeration Association Dinner. So I have a confession to make. I'm from RI, the lousy school, and I'm illiterate. I have known Kilian for 38 years. About 38 years ago, I was president of a professional body, and my association joined the Singapore Professional Center. That's where I met Kilian 38 years ago. He was then the president of the Singapore Actuarial Society. Kilian is a very good friend and very nice person. Whatever you ask him, always say yes. Thank you, Kilian, for coming to speak with us today. When you look at the job statistics, it is so sad. It is so sad when you look at the job statistics. 当你看人力部的统计，很悲哀啊！为什么很悲哀？给一个例子给你吧。2天前，9月1号，人力部宣布，159千的低收入的工人，本地工人，从9月1号开始有最低的薪水，就是1400块。1400块是很多吗？扣了公积金20%，1120，这个薪水是很 OK 吗？问题是，当你看到新闻讲报告的统计，你要深入一点，分享一下它基本上是讲什么。159千本地工人，从9月1号最低的薪水1400块。这159千的人，就是那些老板有请外劳的公司才需要给这个最低的收入。如果你的老板没有请外劳的，他连这个最低的1400也不必给你。所以问题就是你要问，有多少的本地人每个月的薪水是少过1400的？因为他们的老板没有请外劳，这个1400与他无关的。It is so sad when you look at the job statistics. 2 days ago, it was announced that 159,000 local workers will get a minimum salary of $1,400 after the typical 20% CPF employee deduction you get $1,120. Wow, what a great achievement, right? After so many years, labor movement, we finally, September the 1st, can give this miserable $1,400 as the minimum salary for local workers. But if you read the details, this 159,000 minimum salary, 1,004, only applies to employers who employ foreign workers. So for employers who don't employ any foreign worker, they don't even have to give this miserable $1,400. So how many people are getting even less than $1,400? Because there's no requirement to pay this minimum as long as the employer does not employ a foreign worker. Now in the same announcement, oh, progressive wage model, very good. July the 1st, PWM, cleaners pay increased to how much? About $1,400. September the 1st, retail workers, minimum pay increased how much? $1,850. After 20% CPA deduction, 1,300 plus. What is the progressive wage model's biggest problem? It only applies to outsourced workers. Let me explain. I am a security agency, I'm a cleaning company. I bid for a contract. So I am required to follow the PWM. If I'm a small company, I employ 1, 2, 3 persons. I don't bid for any contracts. It's an in-house worker. PWM does not apply to them. I don't even have to pay the minimum of the PWM. But good news, 2 days ago it was announced about 19,000 people who are in-house workers that PWM does not apply to them will now apply to them. So in a sense, everybody in the pre-WM sectors, whether in-house, outsourced, will get the minimum. But again, you read the details, there's one problem. No enforcement action to be taken against any employer until February they do not comply with this requirement. My God, after decades, you hit this miserable 1,004 or whatever, and then you still have to wait until February before you enforce it. Something very wrong, right? You read the news. Oh, record job vacancies in the history of Singapore. There are more jobs than people can take, record job vacancies in the history of Singapore. Employment has gone back to pre-COVID levels. Many jobs available, cannot find worker. Income going up, so don't have to worry so much about inflation. You see, sometimes when you look at job statistics, we have this saying, the left don't seem to gel with the right. I give you one example. In the last quarter, the number of unemployed Singaporeans went up by 40%. You say record job vacancy, ma? You say employment level back to pre-COVID, ma? You say nobody got job, nobody want, ma? Right? In the first 2 quarters, most of the job growth are foreign workers and not locals. Then how is it possible with all this great good news that in the last quarter, the number of unemployed Singaporeans went up by 41% to 80 over 1,000. If you don't listen to us at Hong Lim Park talk about jobs of Singaporeans and you read the newspaper, you probably never realize that there were 81,000 unemployed Singaporeans as of June, end of second quarter. You probably never realized that the number of unemployed Singaporeans went up by 41% the last quarter. So how do I know? Well, the MOM Ministry of Manpower website publishes two unemployment statistics: the seasonally adjusted statistics and the non-seasonally adjusted statistics. Most of the time, what you read in the media, in the narrative, in the press release, is the seasonally adjusted statistics. It looks better, okay? Not all the time. But in my view, when you have extremely high inflation, when you're in a pandemic situation, perhaps even more important to highlight the non-seasonally adjusted statistics. Why? Non-seasonally means this is the actual number of people who are unemployed as of 30th June. 80 over 1,000 Singaporeans, 90 over 1,000 Singaporeans and PRs, locals. 757,000 full-time employed residents or unemployed. Net take-home pay estimated monthly less than $2,400. What do I mean by net take-home pay? That means your gross income less your typical 20% employee CPF contribution. So many people earn so little. 757,000 full-time employed residents or unemployed take-home pay 2,400 or less. Hey, look at the statistic definition. It says full-time employed residents. If you include the part-time people, wow, how many people must be earning very low pay, right? So what is the difference between full-time and part-time? You see, many years ago, a part-time worker was defined as somebody who worked up to 30 hours a week. Then many years ago, they changed the definition. So a part-time worker is now someone who works up to 35 hours a week. Then you are counted as part-time. So I always like to tell this joke. By the stroke of a pen, you make everybody look as if they earn more. Let me explain. When you change the part-time definition from 30 hours to 35 hours, the 30-hour people will absorb the 31 to 35-hour people, right? So everybody in the 35 below look as if they're earning more money. Now the full-time people who have gotten rid of all those who are working from 31 to 35 and push them to the part-time. So only left less full-time people who are working more than 35 hours. So they also look like they're earning more money. Magic, right? But of course, the key number is all together, everybody. Are you earning more money or not? And how much more? How much more are you earning? Inflation in July was 7%. If you have no job, your pay is so low, how do you call inflation? I think we are the only country in the world that during this period of high inflation and pandemic has insisted and continue to insist that GST will go up on 1st January. Try to find me another country that increased GST during a pandemic and high inflation. Uniquely Singapore. If you look at the historical statistics, almost invariably, every time GST increased, the inflation increased even more. So as if things are not bad enough. Not only that, find me another country that increased fuel duties during the pandemic. Singapore. Find me another country that increased property tax during the pandemic. Singapore. Find me another country that increased public transport fares during the pandemic. Singapore. It's so sad, right? When you look at the jobs statistics. Actually, it's so hot now. I'm even more sad. I think I better stop. Thank you.
Okay, another round of applause for Mr. Leong Ji Hien, who has gone through with us the statistics. He is actually not the guy who puts numbers to the stories, numbers and analytical analysis to the stories, to the news headlines and stuff. So we normally have a saying, let the numbers do the talking. So not just say, oh, employment is going up, unemployment is going down, fantastic Straits Times headlines we keep hearing. And of course, Mr. Tan earlier brought up that we have had 8 ministers for manpower, but the situation of Singaporeans earning a decent income is being rather questionable. We heard about Mr. Tan speaking about suppression of income due to supply of cheaper labor and stuff. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Sivakumar Chalapa. He comes from a background of finance and presently in education. So he would like to speak to you about primarily jobs, wages, employment, and there's a private joke between us. I call him Mr. Underemployment because everyone is talking about employment or unemployment. He strikes the middle ground. People who are classified as employed, but how many of them are underemployed? The term underemployed is like they are going to work, they are working full time, but however, they are not earning enough to keep up with rising cost of living, rising cost of expenses and stuff. He keeps on speaking about that. So I call him Mr. Underemployment. His knowledge in that topic and subject is off the charts. So Mr. Siva Kumar Chalapa, please. A round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. We are gathered under quite under the hot sun, but let's make it worth it. Okay. Most recently, on the 30th of August, I was told that there is another news about foreign talent. I was told, I don't read the newspapers unless, of course, there is something of interest published, then I go and get a copy and read it. Okay, otherwise, I don't normally update myself through the ST for obvious reasons. A lot of us are familiar already. Okay, now this news article mentions that foreigners who have got 30,000 Singapore dollars as a monthly income can come to Singapore and they would be showered with all the usual benefits to be appointed into a job, a comfortable, cushy job. Now, this is something that it's not new. It has been there for many years that our government like to mollycoddle foreigners. We have heard many things like foreigners create good jobs for the locals. Somehow what? The country belongs to everyone, not only Singaporeans, obviously meaning the foreigners. What are all these for? We are opening our arms to welcome them. Not that, another word that our government has used quite frequently, xenophobic. We are not xenophobic. We just that we want to make sure that there is a proper balance between the local Singaporeans and the foreigners when it comes to economic employment. Okay? Now, this is not the first time. If I cast my mind back, it started sometime around 1998 World Cup. When France won the World Cup, our former Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong was waxing lyricals. Now, there was something a bit unsettling. He was going into an overdrive about how foreigners can come and join the workforce at that time, our workforce in Singapore at that time, and be employed here. Okay, I have got no objection. If I object, they would call me xenophobic too. Fine. But immediately thereafter, I saw a sudden surge in foreigners in various jobs. And in the late 1990s, I was a job searcher myself, and I know the difference it made. 99, or rather 98, 99, 2000, I know the difference it made. Employers were practically sidelining Singaporeans unapologetically. There were some who just expressed a tinge of sadness, but no matter how one tried to make sense out of the situation, the fact that they were just sidelining Singaporeans in favor of foreigners was too obvious and could not be ignored. I remember it so well. So I was wondering, is there something wrong with the system of Singapore, a country, should first of all function for the benefit of Singaporeans? Have we decided to function for the benefit of foreigners and ignore the interests of Singaporeans? Why? And that has not gotten any better since then. It's almost a quarter of a century. Things have gotten worse and worse every year. Recently, I'm not saying recently, about 10, 15 years back, I saw in a school textbook that the Singapore population would be increased by 1.8% annually to accommodate the arrival of foreigners, to add foreign talent. Now, are the foreigners coming into Singapore, are they going to wear a board around their neck, whether they are talent or not talent? Or are you just going to assume simply because he's a foreigner, he must be a talent? The word talent seems to be an entirely abused word. There is nothing that one can attest to being the talent of a person unless you have him working with you for a long time and it is visible in his performance. Other than that, if he is of a particular qualification, yes, he may have an academic qualification, but over time, whether he's a real talent or not, that remains to be seen. Perhaps he has got a higher percentage of becoming a talent than another person without a degree. But there again, a degree is just an academic qualification. You cannot just assume another person who claims to have a certain academic achievement as a talent in the particular job. His performance have to be assessed. Not only that, local persons who have attained academic achievements should not be rejected simply because they do not have the experience. They should be given positions which associate with their academic achievements and be allowed to prove that they too can be talents. Are we having that? No. Many persons who are academically attained are driving private hire vehicles. Some are doing gig economy jobs like Grab food. So in totality, okay, taking all into consideration, it is now very tempting to ask the government, what is your obsession with foreigners? What is it that foreigners have that Singaporeans do not, that you should constantly be harping at every turn, every corner, you wax lyricals that how much we need talent and how much economically we will go backwards without foreigners. Do not get me wrong. There has to be some form of a proportion. It can't be as if the locals can sit at the sidelines and wait as probably reserves while the foreigners come and make the economy vibrant. Vibrant for who? At, at long last, the vibrancy of the economy, assuming it is even there, should filter down to the Singaporean individual because the Singaporeans are the ultimate owners of the country and by extension, the economy too. You cannot say we are having a vibrant economy. Vibrant to who? I guess. Okay, I guess the vibrancy of the economy is just at the top elite level and the economic elites. Is this a desirable condition? Are we going to always tell people, wait, it's a trickle down economics. Wait for it to trickle down. We have been tricked, it seems. People of all nationalities are human beings. Everyone has their weakness and strength. It is not just the precept of one particular nationality or it's one particular nationality does not have. The only reason in totality I have seen with my own eyes, heard with my own ears, and came to the conclusion that we seek foreigners for the price of their labor. Whereas Singaporeans have to cope with the living expenses in Singapore, hence he cannot take the low pay most employers are willing to give. So you take a foreigner and you pay him low, and you, even if you squeeze blood out of him, he's going to just keep quiet because I have done my investigation and found that many foreigners, particularly of one country, come to Singapore after paying hefty charges to agents who secure the job for them. In the end, the agents benefit. Once these persons from foreign countries come here, even if the employer were to exploit them openly, I have heard foreign workers telling me that part of their salary is held back. My question, did you inquire why? Did you read your employment contract properly? They don't leave period of the contract just to pay off those travel expenses to Singapore, then only they see real money. Okay, so such bounded employees who has got no legal protection. No, of course, officially there can be, but they do not want to resort to for fear of reprisals. Would employers like to have them? Naturally, employers would love them. So once such a situation exists, more and more foreign employees at a lower level are admitted in. Are things the same for all employees? No. PMETs have got a little better, and of course, the super employees at the upper echelon are much better. This situation impacts on our local PMETs who has to compete with foreign arrivals who go for the PMET jobs. Now, there ought to be some proportion as to how many a company should employ as PMETs, foreigners and locals. Probably there is, but I do not think there is proper enforcement done. Okay, so this caused a major setback for local Singaporeans at the PMET level to easily lose their job to foreigners. With this situation, the PMET jobs for Singaporeans get less and less, and the numbers dwindle. It seems that every time there is a major crisis, global crisis, the government seems to take it as an opportunity to bring foreigners in by the truckloads. One, after the Asian financial crisis in 1998-99, there was a heavy influx of foreign workers. The second wave came after the global financial crisis, following the subprime crisis in the US. We had even one manpower minister so euphemistically said, cheaper, better, faster should be the mantra for our workers. Naturally, you know, Singapore is not a conducive country to have cheaper workers because the cost of living simply would not allow you to adopt a low-cost lifestyle. No matter what, you will be squeezed dry when you buy your HDB flat. Whatever that remains goes to raising your family. Education is not cheap, okay? Even food and transport are always on the upward march. Your imagination of living a simple life would only be a pipe dream in the long run. So with all these conditions, you want to preach to Singaporeans they should cheapen themselves and their labor, but they should be better. How is that possible? Okay, now with this, what happened? In 2011, there was a first time the PAP lost a constituency. Okay, a group constituency rather. Now, that was clearly a backlash at that time of massive job losses and skyrocketing property prices. We have that now, don't we? Okay. Now, in the midst of all this, how are the employers helping out? I have spoken to some employers and some foreign employees. The moment I broach the topic, there should be a balance between foreign and local employees. Almost as if on cue, they will say, Singaporean workers, they are very choosy. They are very difficult at the workplace. It's almost like a well-rehearsed nursery rhyme. They all have the same lyrics and appear to be from the same songwriter. Now, I've seen many who practice this of method of running down Singaporeans because it is in their vested interest to do so. The employers do that. The foreign workers in companies do that because the more they run down the Singaporean workers, the more they benefit. One as an employer, the other one as a potential competitor. So I have told them, look, if this is how you're going to maintain the balance, things look bleak for all of us, even the foreign workers in Singapore. Imagine, for those Singaporeans who are in the future going to have their children looking for a job, you have all these negative images of Singaporean worker being choosy, being difficult at the workplace, cannot work on weekends. All this has been propagandized. Your children is going to sit in front of an employer who is going to have that in his mind, and he is going to impose that on the children as a selection criteria. Your children have to climb that wall of prejudice just to get that first job. This is a warning that I have to give to all persons who practice such unfair practices. In totality, the resources of Singapore belongs to Singaporeans, tangible as well as intangible. The tangible resources like land and water and CPF, of course. What has happened, we all know. The air, they are talking about carbon tax. So, akan datang, wait. So, all tangible, healthcare, everything has been sidelined and ring-fenced as taxation tools. So, what is there remaining? The only thing remaining are the intangibles like the economy, the employment. That too is being distorted in favor of the foreigners. They repeatedly claim their record job vacancies, but they would subtly be silent on what is the remuneration. The remuneration given for job vacancies should also be published together with the number of jobs, mean, mode, or median, whatever, as long as it gives fair information. You cannot just say X number of jobs are there for taking, but you are not disclosing what are the remuneration. You are not presenting the true information and has got an ulterior motive, right? Okay. So with all these information not in their proper order, we have to think of some way whereby we have to track the job vacancies and decide, or rather be made known who the vacancies go to. Perhaps the manpower minister can look into this. Instead of saying X number of jobs, give a serial number, put it on the record, on the system for all to access. Serial number 1, what is the job? Company. Okay, ultimately everyone can keep a record where it goes to. No one needs to be in the dark. At the end of it, at regular intervals, we can see what job vacancies went to who. And we can do better statistics from there. Now, let me sum it up. We have seen over the last 63 years, the resources of the country being deviated less and less from the average Singaporean to the ruling elites, economic elites, and recently to foreigners. This must change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Siva, for that speech. So that was quite a long speech, and he had a lot of good points to say. But however it was, he did mention the thing. But what caught my attention? What caught my attention was he mentioned that about sustainability of jobs for Singapore and Singaporeans, as well as trickle down. Have we been tricked? That is a good punchline. Anyway, I would like to introduce out our next speaker. Our next speaker is a good friend of mine and the author of this book, Love Singapore Vision 2020. So he's among us in the audience right now, and I've got a few copies of his book up for sale. If you guys are willing to come to get to purchase any amount, open amount. So I'd like to introduce up to our stage Dr. Michael Fang. Please come up and he'll be also speaking about jobs and with today's theme about jobs, employment, unemployment. In fact, I'd like to say that he got a fantastic foresight. Now is year 2022. When he wrote this book in 2020, a lot of these issues are already highlighted in the book 2 years ago. Fantastic foresight. Michael, take it away.
Thank you. I'd like to first and foremost thank Prabhu for the short and brief introduction. Okay, can you guys hear me? I think you guys are, yes, very good. I think you guys were probably sleepy over the afternoon, yeah, and it's been a hot afternoon. Thank you for staying with us and paying kind attention. All right, I'll try to keep this short. All right, I'll give a very short speech. In fact, I won't talk too long. Okay, the gist of it is this. All right, okay. Actually, we don't care how much do foreigners earn, don't we? I mean, how much they earn is actually not, to some of us, not our concern. Why do we come to this park today is to find out, how much do we actually earn and is it enough to our upkeep? Okay, so these are relevant issues. This is sharp and straight and to the point, all right? It's basically how much we earn and how much can it keep up with our cost of living. That is why you come here today. You didn't come here to find out whether this foreigner earned 30K. Look, there are many of them overseas that earn 30K. There are many of them that earn $500-600, right? Even Africans that earn $1 a day, yeah? So the acute question is, the point in which you come here to find out today is, how much are you earning relative to the previous years, right? And is it enough for your upkeep? Is it enough to build a future? Is it enough for the subsequent years in which you cast your vote for the government? And which government should you pick, all right? So that is essentially why you're here, all right? And how would these policies affect you? All right, so first of all, let me have a show of hands, okay? How many of you, right, earn below the median wage? Okay, let's say we have, okay, maybe not the median wage, maybe let's say below $3,000. Any show of hands? All right, okay, there's one brave chat. Any more? Below 3K? All right, some of you are retirees, I understand that, okay? Are reluctant to put our hands, okay? But a recent report came out of the paper stating that, oh, it's a blessing that we have we up the game and basically we're paying some workers above 1,000 for a day. Am I correct? Yeah. So is that really a blessing in disguise? How much do you actually need to earn to have a living in Singapore to just sustain? Okay, let's look at some numbers. Okay. All right. Nowadays you rent a room in Singapore, right? Rental rates. The cheapest you can get is probably about, I don't know, averaging about 600 to 800. Yeah. Okay. So if you have that in mind, right, that you need a basal rental, you need to pay your electricity, you need to pay your phone bills, right? So let's say you allocate about 100 for each. Okay, let's talk about some financial planning. Okay, 600 to 800 plus another 100 for utilities conservatively, plus another 100 for let's say your phone bills, right? That's already 800. Then you need to eat. All right. So eating is a very important part of Singapore's life. Like you should know, right? You need to eat out every day if you're working. Don't tell me you stay at home and don't find a job, right? So you can do that. Of course, some of you are housewives and you can actually do that. But how about your spouse who's earning for you, right? So if you average out some numbers, if let's say every day you spend about $10 of food currently, okay, which is like $5 and probably a meal or a drink or two, right? So the cheapest you can get around the average rates is about, let's say you put aside $300-400 a month, yeah, and you haven't added transport, right? So altogether, right, if you have let's say 800, 900, 1,000, right? PUB, and then your phone bills, yeah. All right, and then you still need to eat. So at least it's 1,400, 1,500 a month, right? So for those of you who are earning less than that, how in the world can you keep out of it? And with the wage, means okay, they talk about wage suppression in Singapore, which is true. Okay, because if you're looking at 1,004 as a minimum maintenance, and then you still have other things like, don't you have relatives to take care of? Maybe a father, a mother, or two, right? Some other bills to pay. So without the normally, I mean, without a decent $2,000-3,000 a month, it's very difficult to get by. And $2,000-3,000 a month for, let's say, a normal workers' production job, okay? You find that 10 years ago in Singapore. And has inflation gone up? Yes, it has gone up. So inflation is not a remote concept. It is staring at you in the face right now. It is staring at you when you're facing $8 chicken rice, right? How many of you have heard of $8 chicken rice? Do you think that's a myth? No. It is hard hitting, it is in your face. Alright? $8 chicken rice is coming. $2 drinks are coming. Do you need to work? Yes. Can you stay at home and don't work? Of course you could, but someone need to go out and work as well, right? You know who's going to pay for the HGB and PUB, right? And quite a number of people had their electricity cut off, right? Being unable to pay. So when it reaches that stage, you know that, right? Basically the goose is cooked. Okay, the goose is very Singaporean goose is cooked. Okay, so unless there's a concomitant rise of salaries, how the hell are you going to pay your bills in the next few years? So the question is, who can address these policies for you? So yes, number one is the current incumbent government. Of course, they can do that, right? But have they done that with the increasing GST and coming in two increments and perhaps more? The cost of living is on a progressive rise. So if you think it doesn't hurt your pocket today, you're free to walk off. But if you think it does, right, then you need to pump some action, join some party, or maybe donate some money to a party that can actually help you. So PV is not a socialist. It's not a socialist party. It is actually a very normal, structured party that actually tries to find out good policies for people, right? Like for example, slowing the GST. Do you think the GST will slow down because you wish it to slow down and nobody spoke up? No, it will not. It will not. It has only slowed down because there is resistance to the movement, right, of GST. But GST is, they say, unstoppable. Why is it unstoppable? So let me ask you, who do you give your votes for in the last election? Who did your relatives give the vote for in the last election? Did you bring one or two to the voting booth, or do you carry a string of them like what other countries have done? Yeah, to the polling booth. They can vote their own choices, but maybe you go as a group and find out. Yeah. So whatever way the pendulum swings, it's fine. But at least you have a decision in your hand to do the right thing in the right direction. That is the most important thing. Because I can tell you until the donkeys come home, until the cows come home, what does it matter to you? The only thing that matters to you is your stomach and whether you can actually afford your next generation to live on in Singapore. Okay, we have built our roots here for the last 20 years and decided a path of nation building, right? Even the PAP has said that, right? They started nation building. So if you started a nation building, why are you welcoming excess foreigners until such that the balance point has been disrupted, such that we cannot afford our own population? Where has the training of our own population failed? That is the question, you see. It is not too late to redress all this. It's actually still in time, right? But we are counting down to our last two chances, right? Because once the number of foreigners increase to past the balance point, which is not too far away, right? We have lost all effective control of our country, right? So basically, what is more important in the country? Is it economic growth in numbers or is it citizens? You tell me. Okay, what is important to you in the country? Come, is it you or is it the economic numbers that feed the rich businessmen or rich construction bosses? What do you say? Whose vote is it relevant to? Think about it. I don't provide answers. I don't try to blast on statistics that basically numbs the mind. I mean, my colleagues have already told you the facts, right? So it's up to you to judge. It's not up to you to judge, in fact. It is up to you and your neighbors to judge. If you haven't brought your neighbor to the polling booth, you have failed. You have failed yourself and you have failed Singapore. Why is 56.24% over the other side? Why? What have you not done as Singaporeans? What have you done as Singaporeans? If you can bring 5 or 10 people to the polling booth or talk to them, right? The opposition party is so few. so decimated and so disunited. So obviously, we need a normal, rational thinking party to come to the forefront to propose these ideas. Don't say we have no solutions. That's not true. Stopping or maybe slowing, not stopping, sorry, slowing immigration is the solution. Slowing GST is a solution. It buys you time. It buys you time for inflation to keep up with your salaries. It buys you time for a lot of things to adjust, right? And it also buys you proper solutions, right? If we can think about it, we can focus on economic growth, right? And reduce the GST instead because it is a proportionate tax. As the economy grows, I mean, you get more revenue from it as well, right? Why must we always look backward at a fixed model? Correct? Why can we not encourage growth for Singaporeans instead of thinking Singapore is a dead duck country? What do you think? Come, is you yourself more important, or is economic figures that does not reach you more important? Anyone? Okay, you're all still thinking, all right? But I'm telling you, if I'm a normal citizen. So basically, the numbers that does not reach me will not matter to me, right? What matters to me is that whether I can eat tomorrow. What matters to me is whether my fellow compatriots and Singaporeans have a roof over their head tomorrow. You, in a ascending property market, yes, very good. You look like you earn 1 million, yeah. From 600,000 you put you earn 1 million, but the next one is 1.4. Most Singaporeans only got one property. What are you going to do? You have to pay for that 1.4, right? Yeah, unless you want to live in the streets, and then you have to pay the stamp duties, yeah. You have to pay the taxes, yeah. So who's actually the net benefiter from all this? Think about it. On paper, it looks impressive, but if the thing is spiraling out of control, how is it impressive to you? I pose questions. I don't give hardcore what, but there are solutions. I don't give hardcore solutions and say, look, you must do this, but there are solutions, and we are well aware. PV is one party that's well aware of it, right? The rest of them are a bit like, oh, some of them are socialist parties and dumb, and communists and all that. Of course, we don't ascribe to that, right? We are normal people, aren't we? So I'm speaking to the normal, common class people, yeah? Like you and me, we just worry about what to eat at the next meal. We just worry about whether our salaries can keep up. We just worry whether we have a roof over our heads. We just worry when we sell off the house, do we still have a roof over our heads? Can we still afford the next house? Minus the taxes, the renovation, the stuff. All right? So ascending property market, it's time to wake up and take a look whether it's really beneficial to Singaporeans. Okay? That is my message to you, all right? Because you guys really need to think and wake up and grab your friends, right? You don't grab your friends and talk to them, nobody will ever know, right? Because we know who the control of the mainstream media is at, right? We know where the funding is at. Okay, the opposition does not have all this. It relies on the common hardworking Singaporeans, right, to band together to think for themselves. Whether you vote the PAP or PV or some other party, it does not matter. But you have to make an active decision in assessing your role, right? And now we are not an anti-immigration party also, so don't get it wrong. We are come from a country of immigrants, but the problem is we have built our roots 20 years ago, and basically we call it nation building. So we need to have some basis for nation building, right? We cannot say that we accept every Tom, Dick, and Harry here and pay them at artificially low rates. Look at Japan. Does it accept African workers from Africa and pay them African wages in Japan? Think about it. They don't, right? Why? Because it will cause total chaos in their society. Every society that progresses needs to be commensurate with their wage. So you are here now. Basically, the question in your mind is, can I survive with my current salary for the next 4 years? Can my family survive, or my descendants, or my future descendants survive with the current salary that's going on and with the system that's going on? If you think it needs change, sure, join us or vote for us. If you think it doesn't need change, then sure, go ahead, join and vote the PAP. It doesn't matter one way or the other. Because after 4 years or 8 years, it wouldn't matter anymore. All right? That's all I got to say. Thank you. Bye.
All right, Dr. Michael Fang, thank you very much. And with that, I was the first speaker. I was also the MC, and that leaves me to be the last man again, the last speaker. Just kidding. So always at the end of every event, I'd like to quote one of the greatest British prime ministers always, Winston Churchill, okay?
always will come to the end of the event and people will be like, oh, it's the end. That's like, no, this is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end. Maybe this is the end of maybe just a new beginning. So before we go to the end, I'd like to quote today. I have limited copies, only 3 copies of my book. Prabhu Ramachandran addresses real issues in Singapore, and Dr. Michael Spung's Love Singapore Vision 2020. It's I've got 3 copies of each book, and it's open price. Any amount you all want to give. So if you want to read, feel free to approach us. We just have limited copies here and all today. And just if in case you guys want to follow me on Facebook, it is my name Prabhu Ramachandran, addresses real issues in Singapore, where I usually speak about the news, the updates, analysis, and statistics of happenings in Singapore, the issues that matter to most Singaporeans, the problems that all of us face, and so on and so forth. So till we meet again, farewell and thank you very much. Goodbye.
We must always make Michael the last speaker because I will scold everybody.
Because he be bothered.